Most people move through life reacting. They respond to what is loud, urgent, or emotionally charged. They interpret events at face value and then act quickly, believing speed equals strength. Yet the real advantage rarely belongs to the fastest responder. It belongs to the clearest observer. Strategic thinking begins with what can be called the strategic lens. The strategic lens is the deliberate habit of interpreting situations through long-term consequence and advantage. It is the ability to pause long enough to ask what is really happening, what is likely to happen next, and where hidden opportunity might exist. Without this lens, intelligence becomes scattered effort. Every environment contains visible action and invisible structure. Visible action is what people say, what they demand, what appears urgent. Invisible structure is timing, incentives, relationships, and long-term implications. Reactive individuals fixate on action. Strategic individuals study structure. Imagine a manager called into an unexpected meeting. Revenue numbers are down. Senior leadership is tense. Voices rise quickly, and blame starts to circulate. One manager immediately defends his department, listing reasons why the decline is not his fault. Another begins suggesting aggressive cost cuts without examining data. A third remains quiet for a moment. She observes who is speaking with emotion and who is speaking with data. She notices that the decline is concentrated in a single product line and that a competitor launched a similar feature 2 months ago. Instead of defending or attacking, she proposes a targeted response. Reposition the product, adjust messaging, and temporarily shift marketing budget rather than cutting staff. While others react to pressure, she interprets structure. Within weeks, her team stabilizes performance. Her advantage did not come from louder speech. It came from clearer sight. The strategic lens separates stimulus from meaning. An email marked urgent is not automatically important. A raised voice is not automatically authority. A setback is not automatically failure. Interpretation creates emotional reaction, and emotional reaction drives behavior. Change the interpretation, and you change the outcome. This discipline requires slowing down your internal narrative. The mind fills gaps instantly. It assumes threat, assumes disrespect, assumes scarcity. Strategic thinkers resist that automatic story. They replace it with analysis. They look for incentives. They consider timing. They evaluate patterns. Competition often rewards those who see the second move before the first move is complete. When someone makes a demand, the question is not only whether to agree or refuse. The deeper question is why the demand is being made now. What pressure exists on the other side? What constraint might be shaping their urgency? The person who understands the pressure behind the request often controls the negotiation without appearing forceful. Operating through the strategic lens also changes how you experience setbacks. A lost opportunity becomes information. A rival's success becomes data. Instead of personalizing events, you position them. You ask how this shift alters the landscape and where the next opening may form. This perspective builds calm. Urgency loses its grip when you recognize that many crises are simply transitions. Emotional spikes flatten when you understand that most aggressive moves are reactions to unseen pressure. Clarity reduces intimidation. To strengthen this lens, begin with a simple drill. At the end of each day, review one situation that triggered a strong reaction. Describe the event in neutral terms, removing emotional language. Then identify at least 3 possible interpretations that do not center on threat or personal attack. Next, consider what incentives or constraints may have influenced the other party's behavior. Finally, Decide what response would create long-term advantage rather than short-term relief. Practiced consistently, this rewires perception from reaction to positioning. Strategic thinking is not about manipulation. It is about alignment. When you see clearly, you waste less energy. When you interpret accurately, you act deliberately. The noise of the moment stops dictating your behavior. Those who outsmart opponents are rarely the most aggressive. They are the most observant. They recognize patterns before others feel them. They understand that every move creates a future position, and they choose positions carefully. Adopting the strategic lens means accepting responsibility for interpretation. Events are raw material. Meaning is a choice. When you control meaning, you control movement. From this foundation, competition becomes less chaotic. You begin to notice leverage forming before others recognize the opportunity. You become harder to pressure, harder to surprise, and far more difficult to outmaneuver. Clear perception precedes calculated action. The advantage begins long before the visible move is made. Clarity defeats confusion before effort even begins. Many people work hard yet drift because they have never defined what winning actually looks like. They chase improvement, recognition, or growth in vague terms. Vague targets produce scattered action. End-state clarity is a precisely defined outcome that determines what winning means. It is not a wish. It is not a mood. It is a concrete description of the result you intend to produce, expressed in observable terms. When the end state is clear, decisions simplify. When it is unclear, every option feels equally urgent. Without a defined end state, energy spreads thin. You say yes too quickly. You pursue opportunities that look impressive but move you nowhere meaningful. You measure progress by activity rather than advancement. This creates exhaustion without leverage. Strategic thinkers reverse the process. They begin at the finish. They define the position they want to occupy, the result they intend to secure, or the condition they aim to create. Only then do they move. Consider an entrepreneur preparing to launch a new service. At first, his goal is broad: build a successful brand and make more money. He spends weeks designing logos, rewriting taglines, adjusting his website colors, and researching competitors. Activity feels productive, yet revenue does not move. Frustration builds. Eventually, he pauses and defines a specific end state. Secure 5 long-term clients within 90 days, each paying a defined monthly fee in a clearly identified niche. The shift is immediate. Instead of redesigning his brand again, he identifies 50 ideal prospects. Instead of posting generic content, he crafts direct outreach messages tailored to that niche. Instead of chasing social media attention, he schedules focused conversations. Within 2 months, he closes 3 contracts and has 2 more in negotiation. The difference was not effort. It was precision. Once the end state became specific, irrelevant actions lost their appeal. Clarity compresses options. When you know exactly what you want, most distractions eliminate themselves. Invitations, partnerships, and side projects are no longer evaluated by how exciting they appear, but by whether they move you closer to the defined outcome. This discipline also sharpens communication. When you speak with end-state clarity, others understand direction. Ambiguity weakens authority. Precision builds confidence in those who follow you or negotiate with you. An unclear objective invites manipulation. If you do not know what outcome you require, others will define it for you. They will shift the conversation, adjust the scope, and redirect the goalposts. Clear outcomes protect against drift. There is also a psychological shift that occurs. A defined end state reduces anxiety because uncertainty narrows. The mind stops scanning endlessly for possibilities and begins focusing on execution. Energy consolidates. End state clarity must be observable. Be respected is not an end state. Lead the next major project and deliver it on time with measurable results is observable. Get in shape is not precise. Reach a specific performance benchmark within 6 months is measurable. Precision transforms aspiration into strategy. Developing this skill requires discipline. Most people resist specificity because it exposes commitment. A vague goal preserves comfort. A specific one demands accountability. Strengthen this capacity with a focused exercise. Choose one area of your life where progress feels inconsistent. Write a single sentence describing the exact outcome you want, including measurable elements and a time frame. Remove any words that cannot be observed by an outside party. After defining it, list the 3 behaviors that most directly contribute to that result and eliminate or postpone activities that do not support those behaviors. Review this sentence each morning for 30 days and evaluate decisions against it before committing time or energy. The repetition will train your mind to filter action through outcome. Clarity also enhances resilience. When obstacles appear, you do not abandon direction because the direction is specific. You adjust tactics while holding the result steady. The target anchors adaptation. Opponents often rely on confusion. In negotiation, in competition, even in personal conflict, ambiguity benefits the party who can shift definitions midstream. When your end state is fixed and articulated, you are harder to destabilize. Winning begins long before the contest. It begins with defining what victory means in practical terms. Once that definition is established, effort aligns, distractions fade, and movement gains force. Precision creates power. A clear outcome shapes behavior, sharpens focus, and turns motion into progress. When you know exactly where you are going, every step either counts or it does not, and that distinction changes everything. Every environment contains 2 forces operating at the same time. One pushes forward. The other pushes back. Progress is shaped not only by effort, but by understanding where pressure naturally builds and where limits quietly define the field. A leverage point is a small, targeted action that produces disproportionate results. It is the pressure point in a system where minimal input shifts maximum output. Constraint mapping is the disciplined act of identifying the limits that shape possible moves. Together, these 2 ideas form the backbone of intelligent positioning. Most people attack challenges with volume. They apply more hours, more intensity, more noise. When results stall, they double their effort. Strategic thinkers behave differently. They search for the hinge that moves the door. Leverage exists because systems are uneven. In business, a pricing adjustment may generate more impact than doubling marketing spend. In conversation, asking one precise question may reveal more than delivering 10 arguments. In personal growth, eliminating a single destructive habit may unlock more progress than adding 5 new positive routines. Constraints are often misunderstood. People treat them as obstacles. In reality, constraints define the shape of opportunity. A limited budget forces prioritization. A tight deadline exposes inefficiencies. A powerful competitor reveals where differentiation must occur. When you map constraints clearly, you stop fighting reality and start navigating it. Consider a mid-level employee competing for a promotion in a large organization. Several colleagues work longer hours, volunteer for extra committees, and try to impress senior leadership with constant visibility. She studies the structure instead. Through observation, She recognizes that the company's growth depends heavily on retaining two major clients who have recently expressed dissatisfaction. The constraint is clear: client retention is the bottleneck. Rather than spreading herself thin, she focuses on improving the reporting process for those accounts. She identifies communication gaps, proposes a streamlined feedback loop, and personally ensures follow-through. Within months, client satisfaction stabilizes. Leadership notices not her activity, but her impact. While others chased recognition, she applied pressure at the true leverage point. Leverage requires perspective. It demands stepping back from surface-level busyness and asking what actually drives outcomes in this system. What variable, if shifted, would change everything else? Constraint mapping sharpens this question. Begin by identifying what cannot be changed in the short term. Market conditions, organizational hierarchy, available capital, time limits. Then identify what is flexible within those limits. Strategy emerges at the intersection of fixed boundaries and movable parts. Opponents often reveal their own constraints unintentionally. A competitor who discounts aggressively may be under revenue pressure. A colleague who interrupts frequently may be compensating for insecurity about influence. When you see the constraint behind the behavior, you gain direction. Leverage is rarely loud. It is subtle and precise. It favors patience over impulse. Instead of confronting every issue directly, you locate the central point that influences the rest. There is also internal leverage. Energy, attention, and focus are limited resources. Identifying which single action each day will create the most meaningful shift trains disciplined prioritization. Without this filter, effort disperses into minor tasks that feel productive but generate little advantage. Build this skill through deliberate practice. Select a current challenge and describe the system around it. Identify 3 apparent problems. Then ask which one, if solved, would make the others easier or irrelevant. That is a candidate for leverage. Next, list the constraints shaping the situation, separating those that are fixed from those that are adjustable. Design one small but targeted action aimed directly at the leverage point, respecting the fixed limits. Execute it without distraction and observe the ripple effect. Repeat this process regularly until your mind naturally searches for hinges rather than walls. Understanding leverage prevents burnout. You stop exhausting yourself pushing immovable barriers. Understanding constraints prevents fantasy. You stop designing plans that ignore reality. Advantage accumulates when effort aligns with structure. A small, well-placed move outperforms scattered intensity. Precision outperforms aggression. Every system resists change in predictable ways. Every system also contains weak spots. The disciplined thinker studies both. When you stop fighting everything and start pressing the right point, progress accelerates. Power does not come from force alone. It comes from applying force where it counts. Impulsive decisions feel powerful in the moment. They create the sensation of control. Action replaces uncertainty, and movement relieves tension. Yet most impulsive decisions sacrifice future position for present relief. Strategic advantage depends on something quieter and far more demanding: control over your time horizon. Time horizon is the span of future consideration used when making decisions. Some people think only in hours or days. Others stretch their thinking across months, years, even decades. The length of your horizon shapes the quality of your choices. Short horizons magnify emotion. A harsh comment feels urgent. A missed opportunity feels catastrophic. A temporary setback feels permanent. When the mind is trapped in the immediate frame, reaction dominates. Extended horizons create composure. The same harsh comment becomes a small data point. The missed opportunity becomes one of many cycles. The setback becomes part of a larger pattern still unfolding. Strategic thinkers learn to operate across multiple timelines at once. They handle the present without becoming imprisoned by it. They respect immediate realities while protecting long-term position. Consider an investor watching the market dip sharply over a single week. News outlets amplify panic. Social media predicts collapse. Friends advise selling before losses grow worse. One investor reacts immediately, liquidating holdings to avoid further decline. Another steps back and reviews a 10-year trend. He examines fundamentals rather than headlines. He recognizes that short-term volatility has occurred many times before within a long upward trajectory. Instead of selling, he reallocates carefully into undervalued assets. Months later, as the market stabilizes, his position strengthens. The difference was not luck. It was horizon length. One acted within a week. The other acted within a decade. Time horizon control also shapes personal behavior. When someone disrespects you publicly, the short horizon demands instant retaliation. The extended horizon asks a different question. What response best strengthens my reputation over time? Silence, measured correction, or strategic redirection may build more authority than confrontation. Opponents with short horizons are predictable. They chase immediate wins. They sacrifice credibility for quick advantage. They overextend for short-term recognition. Patience becomes a weapon against them. Expanding your horizon does not mean ignoring urgency. It means contextualizing it. Deadlines still matter. Performance still matters. But you refuse to mortgage long-term stability for temporary applause. This discipline strengthens negotiation. If the other party needs immediate resolution, and you can afford to wait, time becomes leverage. When you are not pressured by the clock, clarity increases. There is also a compounding effect. Small disciplined actions repeated over long stretches produce disproportionate outcomes. A single workout changes little. Consistent training reshapes the body. One thoughtful conversation shifts little. Years of measured communication build influence. Many failures trace back to collapsed horizons. People abandon promising paths because progress feels slow in the short term. They pivot too early. They quit before compounding takes effect. They mistake delay for defeat. Developing time horizon control requires conscious recalibration. When facing a significant decision, deliberately project forward. Imagine the consequences in 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, and 5 years. Notice how the emotional intensity shifts as the timeline expands. Often the option that feels strongest in the moment weakens over distance. Practice a simple mental drill. At the start of each day, identify one action that serves only immediate comfort and one action that serves long-term advancement. Choose the long-term action first, even if it is less pleasant. At the end of the week, review the accumulated effect of those choices. This repeated preference for future gain over present ease stretches your horizon naturally. Time discipline also protects identity. When you commit to a direction, you anchor it across years, not moods. Trends rise and fall. Criticism appears and fades. Your trajectory remains steady. The ability to think long does not slow you down. It sharpens your moves. It allows you to invest energy where returns multiply instead of evaporate. When your horizon expands, fear contracts. You see cycles where others see chaos. You recognize that today's tension may be tomorrow's leverage. Control of time perspective separates the reactive from the strategic. The present moment is powerful, but it is not the whole field. Those who master multiple timelines quietly build positions that outlast noise. Patience, when grounded in clarity, is not passive. It is calculated endurance. Over time, endurance wins. Decisions shape direction. Every advantage, every setback, every shift in position traces back to a choice made under conditions that were never fully certain. Most people decide based on emotion, urgency, or external pressure. Strategic thinkers build structure around choice. Decision architecture is the deliberate design of how you make decisions before you are forced to make them. It is the system that protects clarity when uncertainty rises. Instead of relying on mood or momentum, you rely on preconstructed logic. At the center of decision architecture sits the decision filter. A decision filter is a predefined standard used to simplify complex choices. It acts as a gate. If an option passes the filter, it deserves consideration. If it fails, it is eliminated without emotional debate. Without filters, every opportunity looks tempting. Every request feels personal. Every conflict demands reaction. Mental energy drains quickly because you are evaluating from scratch each time. Strong filters reduce noise. They force alignment between action and direction. They protect time, reputation, and long-term position. Imagine a skilled professional receiving multiple job offers. One company offers a higher salary but limited autonomy. Another offers moderate pay with high growth potential and direct exposure to leadership. A third promises prestige but requires relocation into a volatile market. Without structure, the decision becomes emotional. Status, fear, and short-term income pull attention in different directions. Instead, he applies 3 decision filters he established long before this moment. First, the role must expand his skill set in areas that compound over time. Second, it must increase access to high-level decision-makers. Third, it must align with his 5-year direction rather than distract from it. When each offer is measured against these filters, the answer becomes clearer. The highest salary fails the growth criterion. The prestigious option fails the stability requirement. The moderate-paying role passes all 3. What initially looked like a complicated dilemma resolves into a focused move. Structure removed confusion. Decision architecture also requires consequence mapping. Every choice creates second-order effects. Accepting a new responsibility may increase income while reducing flexibility. Declining a partnership may protect independence while limiting scale. Strategic thinkers evaluate not only immediate outcomes but downstream impact. Trade-offs are unavoidable. Attempting to avoid trade-offs leads to compromised results. When you choose one path, you abandon another. Strength comes from conscious sacrifice rather than accidental loss. Emotional spikes are dangerous in decision-making. Anger invites retaliation. Excitement invites overcommitment. Fear invites retreat. A well-designed architecture absorbs these spikes. You delay major decisions when emotionally charged. You return to your filters when external pressure rises. There is also value in narrowing options deliberately. Too many choices create paralysis. When evaluating opportunities, restrict consideration to those that clearly support your defined outcomes and long-term direction. Eliminate the rest quickly. Energy preserved is power retained. Develop this discipline through a practical exercise. Identify 3 standards that any major opportunity must meet in order to earn your commitment. Write them in clear, measurable terms. Keep them visible. The next time a significant decision appears, Score the option against each filter honestly. If it fails even one critical standard, pause rather than rationalize. Then map at least 2 second-order consequences that could unfold over time. This structured pause will gradually become instinct. Strategic advantage grows from consistent decision quality. One reckless choice can undo months of disciplined progress. One thoughtful move can accelerate years of effort. Opponents often exploit impulsive decisions. They create urgency. They manufacture scarcity. They push for immediate answers. When your architecture is strong, urgency loses its force. You are willing to let an opportunity pass if it does not meet your criteria. That restraint builds quiet authority. Clarity of outcome, awareness of leverage, and control of time perspective all feed into this structure. Decisions become less about reacting to circumstances and more about shaping them. A well-built decision system does not eliminate risk. It ensures that risk is chosen consciously. It transforms uncertainty from a threat into a calculated variable. Consistency in choice creates stability in position. Stability compounds into strength. Over time, disciplined decisions form a pattern others can predict. You do not move without reason, and when you move, it is deliberate. Power belongs to those who decide with structure rather than impulse. Competition is rarely won by force alone. It is won by understanding what drives the people across from you. Words are surface. Behavior is signal. Incentives are cause. Incentive awareness is the recognition of what truly drives another person's behavior beneath their stated position. It is the discipline of asking not just what someone wants, but why they want it now, and what they gain or lose depending on the outcome. When you understand incentives, you stop reacting to statements and start interpreting motivation. Every competitive field is shaped by hidden pressures. A colleague pushing aggressively for approval may be trying to secure visibility before performance reviews. A vendor insisting on urgency may be facing internal quotas. A rival criticizing your strategy publicly may be protecting their own status. Most people listen to arguments. Strategic thinkers study incentives. When someone opposes you, it is tempting to counter their logic point by point. This often escalates tension and produces little movement. If you instead identify the underlying driver, you can reposition the conversation entirely. Influence grows when you align with incentives rather than collide with them. Incentives generally fall into a few categories: security, status, financial gain, time pressure, or risk avoidance. Rarely does anyone act without one of these forces in play. The key is observation without assumption. Picture a senior executive negotiating a partnership with another firm. The opposing representative repeatedly pushes for strict performance clauses and heavy penalties for missed targets. At first glance, it appears aggressive and distrustful. Rather than reacting defensively, the executive studies the situation. He learns that the representative's company recently suffered a failed partnership that cost them credibility internally. The real incentive is risk containment and reputation repair. Instead of arguing against the clauses directly, he proposes transparent milestone reporting and shared review checkpoints that demonstrate accountability without punitive terms. The tone shifts. Resistance softens. Agreement becomes possible. By identifying the incentive beneath the demand, he redirected the negotiation without confrontation. This awareness changes how you interpret pressure. Urgency often signals constraint. Excessive confidence may signal insecurity. Silence may signal evaluation rather than rejection. Incentive awareness also protects you from manipulation. When someone flatters you excessively, ask what they gain from your agreement. When someone introduces artificial deadlines, ask what pressure they are under. Curiosity replaces emotional reaction. Reading the competitive field requires emotional detachment. If you take every challenge personally, you lose analytical clarity. People act in service of their incentives, not in service of attacking you. When you separate ego from analysis, patterns become clearer. There is power in naming incentives silently to yourself during interactions. As someone speaks, mentally categorize what might be driving them. Are they trying to minimize risk, increase influence, secure recognition, avoid blame? This internal labeling sharpens perception. You will not always be correct, but even tentative hypotheses create strategic patience. Instead of responding instantly, you gather more data. You ask calibrated questions. You watch how they respond when specific topics arise. Incentives reveal themselves through consistency. This discipline also applies to group dynamics. In meetings, observe who gains from a particular decision. Notice who remains quiet when certain proposals emerge. Influence often rests not with the loudest voice, but with the one whose incentives align most closely with organizational direction. Strengthen this skill with a focused practice. During your next significant interaction, choose one person and observe without interruption for several minutes. Pay attention to tone shifts, repeated phrases, and what topics trigger energy. After the conversation, write down what you believe their primary incentive was and what constraint might be shaping it. Then design one follow-up communication that aligns with that incentive rather than challenges it directly. Over time, this deliberate analysis becomes instinctive. Strategic thinkers do not aim to control people. They aim to understand the forces that already control behavior. Once those forces are visible, positioning becomes easier. When you operate with incentive awareness, conflict loses its sharp edges. You recognize that behind most opposition lies self-interest, not hostility. That recognition opens alternative routes. The competitive field is rarely transparent. It rewards those who can see beneath statements and into structure. Incentives are the structure behind behavior. Understanding them does not guarantee victory, but ignoring them guarantees miscalculation. When you read what truly drives others, you move with precision instead of assumption. And precision, applied consistently, reshapes outcomes in your favor. Most people listen to reply. Strategic thinkers listen to extract. Conversations are rarely equal exchanges of information. They are layered with emotion, positioning, hidden concerns, and partial truths. Words carry content, but they also carry hesitation, emphasis, avoidance, and intent. Strategic listening is the discipline of identifying signal within noise and using it to sharpen your position. Signal is the meaningful information that reveals priorities, fears, constraints, or opportunities. Noise is everything else: repetition, exaggeration, distraction, or emotional decoration. The ability to distinguish between the two creates quiet advantage. Many individuals interrupt too quickly. They defend before fully understanding. They assume meaning before confirming it. In doing so, they reveal their own position while learning little about the other side. Strategic listening reverses this imbalance. You speak less early on. You observe more. You allow others to reveal structure voluntarily. Silence is not weakness. It is leverage when used deliberately. When someone continues speaking to fill space, they often expose details they had not planned to share. Discomfort with silence causes overdisclosure. Consider a consultant meeting a potential corporate client. The client begins by stating they want to improve team performance and strengthen culture. These phrases are broad and vague. A reactive consultant would immediately present a standard solution. Instead, she asks a precise question and then listens without interruption. What specifically is not working right now? The client speaks for several minutes, mentioning missed deadlines, interdepartmental blame, and a recent failed product launch. She notices that the client's tone sharpens whenever the marketing department is mentioned. She asks another focused question: how has that affected leadership trust? The client leans back, pauses, and admits that senior leadership is considering restructuring. That statement is the signal. The true issue is not culture, it is leadership credibility under threat. By listening for patterns in tone rather than reacting to surface language, she tailors a proposal that addresses executive alignment first. She secures the contract not because she spoke more, but because she heard more. Strategic listening also reveals inconsistencies. When someone repeats a point excessively, it may indicate insecurity. When details change subtly over time, it may signal pressure or shifting priorities. Patterns matter more than isolated statements. There is a rhythm to disciplined listening. First, let the other party speak freely. Second, identify recurring themes or emotional spikes. Third, ask calibrated questions that narrow the field. Fourth, confirm what you believe you heard in neutral language. This process reduces misunderstanding and increases influence. Listening does not mean passive agreement. It means collecting information before positioning your response. When you finally speak, your words carry weight because they are grounded in data rather than assumption. This skill is especially powerful in competitive environments. Opponents often reveal strategy indirectly. In negotiation, a casual remark about timing may reveal internal deadlines. In conflict, repeated references to fairness may reveal fear of exposure. Observing these cues gives you options. Emotional control strengthens listening. If you become defensive, you stop hearing. If you become eager to impress, you interrupt the flow of information. Calm presence allows full data capture. Practice this deliberately. In your next important conversation, commit to speaking no more than 30% of the time during the first half of the exchange. Focus entirely on observing patterns in language and tone. Afterward, write down 3 pieces of information that were not obvious at the start, but became clear through careful listening. Then consider how that information changes your next move. Repetition of this drill trains restraint and precision. Strategic listening also builds reputation. People feel understood when they are fully heard. This increases openness in future interactions. Information flows more freely toward those who create space. In competition, information is advantage. The person who gathers more accurate data holds stronger positioning power. Talking too soon reduces that advantage. There is strength in withholding your position until you understand the terrain. Listening maps the terrain. Once the map is clear, movement becomes deliberate. Noise surrounds every conversation. Signal hides within it. The disciplined listener separates the two and acts only on what matters. Over time, this habit compounds into insight that others miss entirely. Resistance is not an anomaly. It is a natural response to movement. Whenever you introduce change, propose an idea, or compete for position, friction appears. Those who expect smooth progress are easily discouraged. Those who anticipate resistance are prepared to redirect it. Managing resistance is not about overpowering opposition. It is about positioning yourself so that friction loses its force. Direct confrontation often hardens the other side. Intelligent redirection dissolves tension without spectacle. Opposition usually forms for predictable reasons. People fear loss of status. They fear increased workload. They fear exposure of weakness. They fear uncertainty. When a proposal threatens any of these, resistance surfaces quickly, sometimes disguised as logical concern. The instinctive reaction is to argue, to defend your idea point by point, to escalate volume or authority. This may win a short exchange but create long-term hostility. Strategic thinkers look for a different path. When someone resists, the first task is to reduce perceived threat. If their identity or security feels attacked, they will defend it regardless of logic. Lower the emotional temperature, and clarity returns. Picture a department head introducing a new reporting system intended to increase transparency across teams. Almost immediately, a senior team member pushes back in meetings, highlighting potential inefficiencies and questioning the need for change. Others begin to align quietly with his objections. A direct counterattack would likely polarize the room. Instead, the department head meets with him privately. She acknowledges his experience and asks where he sees the greatest risk. As he explains, it becomes clear that his concern is not efficiency but loss of informal influence. The old system allowed him to control information flow. The new system redistributes visibility. Recognizing this, she offers him a leadership role in designing the rollout process, preserving his status while maintaining the structural change. Resistance softens. Implementation proceeds. The friction was redirected, not crushed. This approach requires composure. When you feel challenged, your ego may demand immediate correction. Strategic control means tolerating temporary discomfort in service of larger positioning. Framing also plays a critical role. Instead of presenting an idea as a disruption, present it as a continuation of shared goals. Language matters. This will fix what's broken, triggers defensiveness. This builds on what's already working, invites cooperation. There are moments when resistance cannot be aligned. In those cases, calculated restraint may be wiser than open conflict. Not every challenge requires immediate resolution. Sometimes allowing time to pass weakens opposition naturally as conditions shift. Public and private arenas must be handled differently. Public confrontation often forces the other party to defend their stance to preserve image. Private dialogue allows flexibility without loss of face. Choosing the right setting is a strategic decision in itself. Managing resistance also means evaluating whether the friction reveals useful information. Opposition can expose blind spots in your own plan. Listening for legitimate concerns strengthens execution. You must also measure the cost of winning. A victory that destroys long-term trust may not be strategic. Short-term dominance can erode future collaboration. Develop this skill through intentional practice. When you encounter pushback, pause before responding. Identify what the other party may perceive as a threat: status, control, security, or workload. Formulate your next statement to address that perceived risk directly rather than defending your idea abstractly. If appropriate, shift the discussion into a private setting and ask open, calm questions that invite elaboration. Observe how quickly tension changes when fear is acknowledged rather than attacked. Redirection is subtle power. It requires awareness of incentives and disciplined listening. It also requires patience. Rapid escalation feels decisive, but often narrows your options. Opponents expect resistance to be met with force. When it is met with composure and strategic framing instead, they lose their footing. The energy of conflict has nowhere to attach. Progress rarely occurs without friction. The goal is not to eliminate resistance but to guide it. When managed skillfully, opposition becomes information. Information becomes positioning. Positioning becomes advantage. Strength is not always loud. Sometimes it is the quiet ability to absorb pressure and reshape it without visible strain. Negotiation is rarely decided at the table. It is decided before the conversation begins. Words matter, but positioning matters more. Those who appear persuasive often benefit from groundwork invisible to the other side. Positional advantage is a situation in which timing, options, or structure favor you. Optionality is the power created by maintaining multiple viable paths. Together, they determine leverage long before the first offer is made. Many people enter negotiation hoping to convince. Strategic thinkers enter prepared to choose. The difference is subtle but decisive. When you need the deal more than the other party, your flexibility shrinks. When you can walk away without damage, your clarity sharpens. Optionality creates calm. If one agreement fails, another path remains. That knowledge changes tone, posture, and pace. Desperation disappears. Patience becomes natural rather than forced. Preparation is the foundation of positional strength. This includes understanding your own minimum acceptable outcome, your preferred outcome, and the point at which you disengage. It also includes mapping the other party's likely incentives and constraints. Strength is built through clarity, not aggression. Imagine a supplier negotiating a long-term contract with a large retailer. The retailer pressures for lower pricing, implying that competitors are ready to replace the supplier. A reactive supplier might immediately cut margins to preserve the relationship. Instead, this supplier has prepared carefully. He has diversified his client base over the past year, ensuring that no single retailer accounts for a dominant share of revenue. He has also invested in product differentiation that competitors cannot easily replicate. During negotiation, he listens calmly, asks about projected volume commitments, and offers tiered pricing tied to guaranteed purchase levels. He makes it clear, without hostility, that sustainable quality requires certain margins. Because he has optionality, his tone remains steady. The retailer senses this stability and adjusts expectations. The final agreement preserves profitability and extends the partnership. The strength was not in rhetoric. It was in position. Positional advantage often comes from time. If the other party faces a deadline and you do not, silence becomes influence. If market conditions favor your offer, patience becomes leverage. Clarity about your walkaway point is essential. Without it, boundaries blur under pressure. When you know exactly where you will disengage, you negotiate with integrity. The other side may test that boundary. Consistency reinforces credibility. Perceived value also shapes negotiation outcomes. Value is not only price. It includes reliability, expertise, speed, reputation, and reduced risk. When you articulate value in terms that align with the other party's incentives, resistance lowers. Confidence in negotiation does not require confrontation. Calm, measured language communicates strength more effectively than intensity. Over-explaining weakens position. Precision strengthens it. There is also strategic value in pacing. Quick concessions invite further demands. Deliberate consideration signals that decisions carry weight. Slowing the tempo can reset dynamics. Develop stronger positioning with a disciplined routine. Before any significant negotiation, write down your ideal outcome, your acceptable outcome, and your non-negotiable limits. Identify at least one alternative path you can pursue if agreement fails, even if it is less convenient. During the discussion, monitor your internal state. If urgency or fear rises, pause before responding. Return mentally to your alternatives. Let your words reflect that steadiness. Afterward, evaluate whether your actions preserved or weakened your position. Negotiation is not about defeating the other side. It is about securing outcomes that strengthen your trajectory. A win that damages reputation or future cooperation may not be strategic. Optionality protects dignity. It prevents compromise of core standards for temporary relief. Over time, those known for steady boundaries attract more balanced agreements. Every negotiation communicates identity. If you fold under mild pressure, that pattern will repeat. If you remain composed and consistent, expectations shift in your favor. Strength at the table is an extension of preparation away from it. When your position is sound and your options are real, persuasion becomes secondary. Presence and clarity do most of the work. Leverage favors the prepared. Those who build position quietly often control outcomes without appearing to fight for them. Pressure reveals what preparation concealed. In calm conditions, many people appear confident and rational. Under scrutiny, tight deadlines, or visible stakes, their thinking narrows. Emotion accelerates. Words rush. Decisions shorten. Composure becomes rare, and rarity creates advantage. Pressure discipline is emotional steadiness when stakes are high. It is the ability to maintain clarity of thought while consequences feel immediate and personal. Without it, skill collapses at the exact moment it is needed most. High-stakes environments distort perception. Minor obstacles look catastrophic. Neutral expressions look hostile. Silence feels threatening. The nervous system pushes for rapid resolution, even if resolution is costly. Strategic thinkers train for this distortion. They expect adrenaline. They anticipate narrowed focus. Instead of resisting these sensations, they regulate them. Control begins with awareness. The moment you recognize physical tension, accelerated speech, or urgent internal dialogue, you regain a measure of authority over it. The body may react, but the mind can still guide action. Consider a trial attorney delivering a closing argument in a packed courtroom. The case has drawn media attention. The client's future depends on the outcome. As she rises to speak, she feels her pulse quicken and her mouth dry. Across the room, opposing counsel watches closely, waiting for any sign of hesitation. An untrained response would rush through key points to escape discomfort. Instead, she pauses deliberately before her first sentence. She breathes once, slowly. She looks at the jury without speaking for a moment, allowing silence to settle. The pause reclaims control of tempo. As she proceeds, her voice remains measured. When interrupted by an objection, she does not react defensively. She listens, nods slightly, and responds with precision. Her steadiness shapes perception. The jury does not see tension, they see authority. The pressure did not disappear. It was contained. Composure influences not only performance but interpretation. Observers equate calmness with competence. When you remain steady, you subtly signal that the situation is manageable. Pressure discipline also protects decision quality. In high-stakes negotiations, emotional spikes invite unnecessary concessions. In conflict, anger invites statements that cannot be withdrawn. The disciplined pause prevents permanent damage from temporary intensity. One powerful tool under pressure is tempo control. Slowing your speech, reducing volume, and inserting deliberate pauses shift physiological state. The environment may feel chaotic, but your pace becomes the anchor. Another element is cognitive framing. Instead of labeling the moment as a threat, label it as a test of training. This reframing redirects energy toward execution rather than survival. There is also strength in narrowing focus intentionally. Under pressure, avoid trying to manage every variable. Identify the single most important objective in that moment and direct attention there. Complexity reduces. Clarity sharpens. Training composure requires repetition in controlled conditions. Seek smaller moments of discomfort and practice regulation deliberately. Speak up in meetings where stakes are moderate. Volunteer for presentations. Engage in difficult conversations rather than postponing them. Each exposure builds tolerance. A practical drill reinforces this capacity. Before entering any high-stakes situation, define your primary objective in one sentence. Then rehearse a slow first response or opening line, including a planned pause. During the interaction, if tension rises, consciously slow your breathing and lower your speaking speed by 10%. Afterward, reflect not only on the outcome but on how effectively you maintained internal steadiness. Track improvement over time. Composure strengthens like any other discipline. Opponents often attempt to manufacture pressure intentionally. They raise their voice, introduce artificial deadlines, or question your competence publicly. If you mirror their intensity, you surrender control. If you remain calm, their tactics lose effect. Silence under scrutiny can be powerful. When others expect immediate defense and you offer measured consideration instead, momentum shifts. Pressure is unavoidable in meaningful arenas. Avoiding it limits growth. Embracing it without discipline leads to self-sabotage. Mastery lies in containment. When composure becomes consistent, high-stakes environments begin to feel familiar. Familiarity reduces fear. Reduced fear improves performance. Under pressure, your internal state communicates more than your words. Steadiness projects strength. Clarity commands respect. Those who remain composed when others fracture gain quiet dominance. Control the tempo, control the response, and the moment bends in your favor. Long-term advantage is shaped by how you are perceived when you enter a room. Before you speak, people assess posture, pace, and emotional tone. They decide whether you are steady or scattered, confident or uncertain. Influence begins before argument. It begins with presence. Strategic presence is the calm, intentional projection of authority and control. It is not arrogance. It is not theatrical confidence. It is alignment between internal clarity and external behavior. When your thoughts are organized and your emotional state is regulated, your presence communicates stability. Many individuals attempt to manufacture authority through volume or dominance. This often produces resistance. True presence is quieter. It relies on consistency, measured speech, and deliberate movement. Presence is built on self-regulation. If your internal state is chaotic, it will leak into your voice and body language. If you seek approval, your tone will rise slightly at the end of statements, inviting validation. If you feel threatened, your speech may accelerate or sharpen. Strategic thinkers refine these signals deliberately. Imagine a newly appointed director leading her first executive meeting. Several senior leaders in the room have more tenure than she does. Some are skeptical. She could attempt to assert control through rigid language or aggressive directives. Instead, she begins by setting a clear agenda in a steady tone. She speaks slowly enough to be heard without strain. When challenged, she does not interrupt. She listens fully, then responds with concise reasoning. She maintains eye contact without staring. Her movements are minimal and intentional. Over the course of the meeting, the room adjusts to her rhythm. Questions become more measured. Side conversations fade. Authority settles not because she demanded it, but because she embodied it. Presence influences perception of competence. People trust those who appear grounded. When your reactions are predictable and balanced, others feel secure aligning with you. Clarity strengthens presence. If you speak in structured thoughts rather than scattered commentary, listeners relax. They sense direction. Disorganized speech weakens authority, even if the ideas are strong. Economy of words also enhances impact. Over-explaining suggests uncertainty. Concise statements signal preparation. When you finish speaking and remain silent comfortably, your words carry weight. Physical alignment matters. Shoulders relaxed but upright. Movements deliberate rather than restless. Breathing steady. These subtle elements shape how others interpret your internal state. Strategic presence also requires emotional neutrality in visible conflict. If someone challenges you publicly, your facial expression and tone determine whether the situation escalates. A calm acknowledgement followed by structured response communicates control. Visible irritation signals vulnerability. This discipline extends beyond formal environments. In personal relationships, steady presence reduces unnecessary tension. When others react emotionally, your calm becomes an anchor rather than fuel. Developing presence requires intentional rehearsal. Record yourself during practice presentations and observe pace, filler words, and posture. Notice whether your voice tightens under mild stress. Practice slowing speech by a small margin and allowing silence between thoughts. Over time, this measured rhythm becomes natural. Another practical exercise strengthens internal alignment. Before entering important interactions, take 1 minute alone. Breathe slowly. Clarify your objective in a single sentence. Visualize maintaining steady posture and controlled tone regardless of response. This brief preparation resets your internal state. Strategic presence is not about suppressing personality. It is about removing volatility. Authenticity remains, but it is filtered through discipline. Reputation grows around consistent presence. People begin to expect stability from you. In uncertain moments, they look toward the calmest individual in the room. If that is you, influence follows naturally. Authority earned through presence endures longer than authority enforced through fear. Fear produces compliance. Presence produces trust. Over time, your identity becomes associated with steadiness. Even before you speak, assumptions tilt in your favor. Opportunities appear because you are seen as capable of handling complexity without drama. Influence at higher levels is rarely loud. It is controlled, measured, and deliberate. When internal clarity and external behavior align, your presence becomes strategic advantage. Walk into each environment with intention. Speak with precision. Move without rush. Calm strength communicates more than any argument ever could. Short-term wins attract attention. Long-term reliability attracts opportunity. Reputation is not built from isolated moments of brilliance. It is built from repeated demonstrations of consistency under varying conditions. Over time, this consistency becomes trust capital. Trust capital is accumulated credibility that expands influence and access. It is the invisible asset that causes others to give you responsibility, information, and opportunity before demanding proof again. When trust is high, friction decreases. When trust is low, even small requests meet resistance. Many people underestimate the strategic value of trust. They focus on performance in individual moments but ignore the pattern those moments create. One broken commitment may seem minor. Repeated reliability, however, compounds into authority. Trust is formed through alignment between words and actions. If you promise delivery on Friday, and Friday becomes your standard of execution, your reputation strengthens quietly. If your tone remains steady in both success and setback, predictability increases. Predictability creates safety. Safety invites collaboration. Trust capital changes negotiation dynamics. When others believe you are consistent and fair, they are less defensive. They assume competence. They share information more freely. Suspicion declines. Consider a project manager responsible for coordinating cross-functional teams in a demanding organization. Deadlines are tight, and miscommunication is common. Early in her tenure, she makes a deliberate decision. She will never overpromise to secure approval. Instead, she sets realistic timelines and communicates potential risks clearly. In meetings, she documents agreements and follows up without fail. When unexpected delays arise, she addresses them immediately rather than hiding them. Months pass. A high-stakes initiative emerges, and leadership must choose someone to oversee it. Although others may have stronger technical credentials, her name surfaces quickly. The reasoning is simple. She delivers what she commits to, and she communicates early when conditions change. Her trust capital outweighs isolated talent. Opportunity flows toward reliability. Trust also stabilizes relationships during conflict. When tension rises, a strong reputation acts as buffer. Others are more willing to interpret your actions charitably because past behavior supports integrity. Building this capital requires restraint. Shortcuts may produce temporary gains but erode long-term standing. Public criticism for momentary advantage may weaken future alliances. Strategic thinkers weigh not only immediate benefit but reputational cost. Consistency across contexts is critical. If you are respectful upward but dismissive downward, patterns will surface. Trust does not compartmentalize easily. It spreads across networks. There is also strategic value in transparency. Admitting uncertainty when appropriate does not weaken authority if it is paired with a plan. Concealing errors often causes greater damage than the mistake itself. Trust capital compounds slowly. It cannot be rushed. Each fulfilled commitment adds weight. Each ethical choice strengthens foundation. Over time, your name carries implied reliability. To strengthen this asset deliberately, conduct a weekly audit of your commitments. List promises made, explicit or implied. Confirm that each has been honored or proactively updated. If you fall short, address it directly and without excuse. This discipline prevents erosion before it spreads. Additionally, identify one area where you can exceed expectations slightly, not dramatically, but consistently. Small positive deviations reinforce reputation. Trust also requires boundaries. Agreeing to everything to appear cooperative eventually leads to failure. Sustainable trust comes from realistic commitments kept consistently, not inflated promises. In competitive arenas, reputation travels faster than resumes. Decision-makers often rely on informal feedback. Being known as dependable expands access beyond what formal credentials alone can secure. Long-term dominance is rarely about a single decisive victory. It is about becoming the person others rely on when outcomes matter. Reliability becomes leverage. Trust capital creates resilience. When setbacks occur, others give you space to recover. When new ventures arise, they include you early. When negotiations begin, skepticism is lower. Strategic thinking extends beyond tactics into character. The disciplined alignment of word and action becomes a quiet advantage that compounds over years. Protect your reputation as you would protect financial assets. Invest in it intentionally. Guard it from impulsive decisions. Strengthen it through steady delivery. Over time, trust transforms from abstract virtue into tangible power. No strategy survives unchanged forever. Markets shift. People change roles. Technology evolves. Power structures reorganize. Those who cling rigidly to a single method eventually lose relevance, even if that method once produced success. Strength requires adaptability without abandoning direction. Adaptive pivot is a controlled change in method while preserving overall trajectory. It is not random reaction. It is deliberate recalibration based on new information. The destination remains stable. The route adjusts. Many individuals confuse persistence with stubbornness. Persistence holds to the objective. Stubbornness clings to the tactic. Strategic thinkers separate the two clearly. When circumstances change, ego often resists adjustment. Admitting that a plan needs refinement can feel like admitting weakness. In reality, disciplined flexibility signals strength. It reflects commitment to results over attachment to identity. Adaptive intelligence begins with honest assessment. If data contradicts your assumptions, ignoring it only delays correction. Clear perception, combined with willingness to adjust, prevents larger losses later. Consider a founder who launches a software product aimed at small businesses. Early feedback is enthusiastic, but conversion rates remain low. Instead of insisting that marketing is the only issue, she analyzes user behavior closely. She discovers that enterprise clients, not small businesses, are using advanced features more heavily. Revenue potential appears stronger in that segment. Shifting focus requires reworking messaging, pricing, and sales channels. It also means acknowledging that her original positioning was incomplete. She makes the pivot deliberately, reallocating resources without abandoning the core technology. Within a year, growth accelerates in the enterprise market. The mission remains intact. The method evolves. Flexibility preserved momentum. Adaptive pivot depends on measured timing. Change too quickly and you sacrifice compounding. Change too slowly and you lose relevance. The balance requires data, observation, and disciplined evaluation rather than emotional swings. There is also strategic value in signaling adaptability without appearing unstable. Communicate changes as refinements informed by evidence. Maintain continuity in purpose. This preserves trust capital while allowing evolution. Rigidity often stems from fear of appearing inconsistent. Yet consistency of direction does not require identical tactics. Long-term strength comes from adjusting intelligently to terrain. Adaptive thinkers monitor leading indicators rather than waiting for collapse. Subtle shifts in performance, engagement, or response often signal need for recalibration. Those who act early avoid crisis-driven pivots. This discipline applies beyond business. In relationships, communication styles may require adjustment as circumstances evolve. In leadership, motivational strategies that once inspired may need refinement as teams mature. Adaptation is not surrender. It is maintenance of relevance. To build this skill, schedule periodic strategic reviews. Select one major goal and examine whether current methods are still the most efficient path. Identify assumptions underlying your approach. Test one of those assumptions through small experimentation rather than sweeping change. Observe results objectively. If data supports refinement, implement gradually. This structured process reduces impulsive shifts while preventing stagnation. Emotional neutrality strengthens adaptation. If feedback feels like personal criticism, resistance grows. When feedback is treated as information, clarity increases. Opponents who refuse to adapt eventually become predictable. Predictability can be exploited. Remaining flexible keeps your positioning dynamic and difficult to counter. Adaptive pivot also protects identity from external turbulence. When market conditions shift or competitive pressure increases, you adjust structure rather than panic. Calm recalibration signals resilience. There is power in saying, with quiet confidence, that new evidence warrants adjustment. This posture communicates commitment to effectiveness over pride. Over time, adaptability compounds into durability. Durable individuals and organizations outlast volatile competitors not because they avoid change, but because they integrate it smoothly. Direction anchors you. Flexibility guides you. Together they form resilient strategy. The environment will continue to evolve. Those who respond with measured adjustment rather than emotional reaction maintain advantage. Consistent direction paired with intelligent pivoting ensures that progress does not stall when terrain shifts. Most people overestimate what can be achieved in a month and underestimate what can be built in 5 years. Short-term intensity feels productive. It creates visible bursts of action. Yet sustainable advantage rarely comes from bursts. It comes from alignment between daily behavior and long-term direction. This alignment is long-game alignment. Long-game alignment is the consistency between daily action and ultimate objective. It is the refusal to let temporary emotion override enduring strategy. When alignment is strong, progress compounds quietly. When it is weak, effort scatters. The long game demands discipline in moments that seem insignificant. Skipping preparation today feels harmless. Delaying one difficult conversation feels comfortable. Accepting a minor compromise feels efficient. Repeated over time, these small deviations redirect the entire trajectory. Strategic thinkers treat ordinary days as decisive. They understand that reputation, skill, influence, and financial strength are built through repetition. There is rarely a dramatic turning point. There is steady accumulation. Consider an executive aiming to become a trusted industry authority. He could chase visibility through constant commentary and quick opinions on trending topics. That path offers immediate attention but shallow impact. Instead, he commits to a slower path. Each week, he studies industry data deeply. He publishes thoughtful analysis grounded in evidence. He speaks selectively at events aligned with his expertise rather than accepting every invitation. Growth in recognition is gradual at first. Others gain temporary spotlight through louder tactics. Over several years, however, his name becomes associated with depth and reliability. When major decisions arise, his perspective is sought. Influence expands not because of volume, but because of sustained alignment between behavior and long-term positioning. Long-game alignment requires resisting distraction disguised as opportunity. Not every open door supports your direction. Some lead sideways. Some lead backward. Delayed gratification is central. Immediate rewards tempt deviation. A short-term gain that undermines long-term credibility is rarely strategic. Strength is measured by the ability to decline such gains. This discipline also stabilizes identity. When you know the trajectory you are committed to, external noise loses power. Praise does not inflate you. Criticism does not derail you. Both are temporary signals within a longer arc. Habits form the mechanics of the long game. Consistent preparation before meetings. Regular skill development. Ongoing relationship maintenance. Financial prudence. These are rarely celebrated daily, yet they build structural strength. Fatigue often tests alignment. When progress feels slow, the urge to pivot impulsively increases. Returning to defined direction prevents reactive change. Patience is not passive. It is sustained execution without emotional volatility. To strengthen this capacity, conduct a monthly alignment review. Identify your primary long-term objective. Then examine the past 30 days of activity. Ask whether the majority of your time and energy supported that objective or drifted toward convenience and distraction. Choose one habit that most directly reinforces your direction and commit to repeating it daily for the next month without exception. Track completion visibly. Consistency builds identity. Long-game alignment also protects against envy. Watching others achieve rapid visibility can create doubt. Yet rapid ascents often lack foundation. Depth outlasts speed. Opponents who chase immediate validation reveal their priorities. They may secure quick wins but struggle with durability. Quiet discipline becomes an advantage over time. Strategic dominance is rarely dramatic. It is the accumulation of aligned actions that compound beyond visibility. When daily behavior mirrors long-term vision, friction decreases. Decisions simplify. Trade-offs become clearer. You cannot control every external variable. You can control whether your actions today strengthen or weaken your future position. That repeated choice defines trajectory. The long game requires emotional maturity. It demands comfort with delayed recognition and incremental growth. It rewards those who remain steady when others fluctuate. Years from now, outcomes will reflect patterns established in ordinary moments. Consistent alignment transforms modest effort into enduring influence. Daily discipline may feel small. Over time, it becomes decisive. Strategy is not a technique you apply occasionally. It is a way you operate. After discipline in perception, clarity in outcome, control over leverage, command of time, structured decisions, awareness of incentives, deliberate listening, calm resistance management, positional negotiation, composure under pressure, steady presence, earned trust, adaptive flexibility, and long-term alignment, something deeper begins to form. It is no longer a collection of tools. It becomes identity. Strategic identity is a self-concept rooted in foresight, discipline, and calculated action. It is the internal standard that governs behavior even when no one is watching. When identity shifts, consistency follows naturally. Many people attempt strategic behavior temporarily. They apply it during visible competition, then abandon it in private moments. Inconsistency fractures advantage. Identity integrates it. When you see yourself as a strategic operator, your default reactions change. You pause before responding. You observe before speaking. You evaluate before committing. These are no longer forced techniques. They are reflexes shaped by repeated discipline. Identity also influences how others perceive you. Over time, patterns solidify. Colleagues expect steadiness. Partners expect preparation. Competitors expect calculated moves. Anticipation itself becomes leverage. Imagine a senior leader facing a public setback. A major initiative fails to meet expectations, and media scrutiny intensifies. Many leaders would react defensively, deflect blame, or retreat from visibility. This leader approaches the situation differently. He addresses the failure directly, outlines the lessons extracted, and presents a measured corrective plan. His tone remains calm. He avoids dramatic language. Internally, he views the moment not as personal humiliation, but as a test of alignment with his standards. Because his identity is anchored in disciplined strategy, he behaves consistently with it. Observers note not the setback alone, but the steadiness of response. Trust remains intact. Influence endures. Strategic identity removes the need for constant external validation. Decisions are filtered through internal standards rather than applause. This reduces susceptibility to manipulation and distraction. It also strengthens courage. When your self-concept includes resilience and foresight, short-term discomfort becomes tolerable. You are not acting out of impulse. You are acting in alignment with who you have chosen to be. To solidify this identity, articulate it clearly. Define the qualities that describe you at your most disciplined: patient, observant, prepared, composed, adaptive, consistent. Write them down. Then ask daily whether your actions reflect those qualities. When behavior deviates, correct it quickly without self-criticism. Identity strengthens through repetition, not perfection. There is power in internal narrative. Instead of saying, "I am trying to think strategically," say, "I operate strategically." Language shapes expectation. Expectation shapes behavior. Surroundings also influence identity. Align your environment with your standards. Engage with individuals who respect discipline. Reduce exposure to chaotic influences that reward impulsiveness. Identity grows stronger when reinforced by context. Strategic identity is not cold or detached. It is grounded. It balances ambition with restraint. It seeks advantage without sacrificing integrity. It pursues success with long-term perspective. As this identity stabilizes, decision-making accelerates without losing depth. You require less deliberation because your principles are internalized. Clarity becomes natural. Competition will continue. Pressure will recur. Environments will evolve. A stable identity allows adaptation without fragmentation. You bend without breaking. Over time, your presence communicates more than your plans. People sense foresight. They recognize measured intent. They adjust accordingly. Victory in life is rarely about a single conquest. It is about sustained positioning across years. When strategic thinking becomes who you are rather than something you attempt, advantage compounds quietly and persistently. You are no longer reacting to the field. You are shaping your place within it with deliberate control. Operate with foresight. Move with discipline. Let identity anchor action. In the end, the greatest advantage is not outsmarting others once. It is becoming the kind of person who cannot be easily outmaneuvered at all.